Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Career Foundry event this evening, where I'm joined once again by Alex Freeberg, who is a analytics manager, but you may know him as the face of Alex the Analyst, which is a fantastic YouTube channel, which you should definitely check out. I'm William, Events and Communications Lead here at Career Foundry. Now we've got we'll just do this here. I know we've got a lot of people joining this evening. So if you just want to drop in the right-hand side, maybe where you're joining from, why you're interested in data analytics, and also maybe some study hacks that you have for yourself. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So do drop your comments on YouTube or Big Marker. We'd love to hear from you. Now, let me just introduce Career Foundry very briefly. Career Foundry is the online school for your career change into tech. We provide lots of different programs, but the one that you're probably most interested in tonight is the data analytics program. So do check that out on the Career Foundry website. We offer a dual mentorship model, which has a mentor and a tutor, but we also have a job guarantee. So if you don't land a job within 6 months of graduating, we refund you your tuition fee. And yeah, that's almost all that I have. Alex is going to be doing the presentation this evening. We're going to also be doing a live Q&A. So do drop your questions in the sidebar for the end. I'm going to disappear, and when I reappear, I'm going to pose some of those questions, some of the best ones, but as many as we can for Alex. And Alex, I think that's about everything from me. I'm going to pass it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We loved your webinar last time, and looking forward to the study hacks for data analytics students.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm reading, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this, but I'm reading the chat, and I see everybody joining in from literally all over the world, which is insane. I'm seeing like Nepal and Mexico, and I think I saw Argentina, like it's in New York. It's crazy. There's so many people out there. So thank you guys so much for joining. Uganda, Brazil, Ghana, I mean, it's everywhere. Thank you guys so much for joining, and thank you for Career Foundry for hosting this. I love doing stuff like this. And you know, you may not have noticed, but I have my camera over here, my computer over here. So if you see me looking back and forth, I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything, you know, while we're going through this. To preface a little bit of this, when Career Foundry asked me to do something like this, I was like, okay, study hacks. I was like, here's what I do. Here's how I study. And as I was actually like writing it down, I was like, man, the way I study has changed dramatically over the years. Like I used to be in college and studying at the library for like 12 hours straight. And now that I've gotten older and things have changed and I've kind of gotten more professional about it, I'm realizing that the way I used to study was absolutely horrible. And that's probably why in certain classes I didn't do as well. But it's, you know, a really, really important skill, especially when you're first starting out, to be able to know how to study. And it's kind of overwhelming. And I'm going to talk a lot about my techniques and the things that I've learned over the years about studying specifically data analytics, but just, you know, study habits in general. But as you guys know, if you guys have watched my channel at all, you know, when I first started out, I was just studying for hours on end and just like trying to absorb as much as I possibly could. And I know I wasted a ton of time doing that. And I haven't really talked about it on my channel, which is why it's such a great topic now, because I've never covered it on my channel. So this is like something for not just the Career Foundry people, but also for my YouTube, where it's also streaming live. So yeah, this is our study hacks for data analytics students. Are we on slide 2 now? Am I on the wrong one? Let me see. I'm not sure if I'm actually changing this. Did I change that? Will isn't here to help me. Okay, I hope you're seeing, actually, let me go to the audience view real quick. I'm sorry, guys, give me a second. I want to make sure I'm not like showing you something or going too far ahead or whatever. Give me 1 second. Okay, perfect.
Sure.
I was just making sure I didn't go too far. When I click that next slide, it goes to the next slide, correct?
Exactly, yeah, we can all see that.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
No worries.
Okay, I'll introduce myself just a little bit in case you haven't seen me. If you're, you know, on the Career Foundry side and you've never heard of who I am, I call myself a YouTuber for the people on YouTube, but I'm mostly analytics. I just kind of do YouTube as like a really fun side thing that I've grown quite a bit. But as of right now, I just quit my job about 4 weeks ago as an analytics manager. I was a big Fortune 10 company, and I quit my job to kind of start my own consulting business. And it's gone really well, and I'm super excited about it. But that's a big change. I literally had to change this about me section like 30 minutes ago because I'm like, wait a second, I just quit my job. I got to redo that. But I work a lot with a lot of technical skills, a lot of cloud platforms. That's kind of like what I've been specializing in, as well as SQL. If you guys know me, I love SQL. And yeah, that's my YouTube channel. If you want to check me out, please do. So let's go on to number one. Now, as I was doing all of this, and I was just talking to Will about this before we started, I was like, a lot of these things I've been doing for a while, and I've started to kind of build these habits, and I know what they are, and I just didn't have a name for it. And so as I'm like, this is how I study. Is there a name for this? This is kind of how I came up. I found this. It's called the chunking method. Now, if you read right here, it literally says the process of taking individual pieces of information and grouping them into larger units. Now, if you've ever done any of my tutorials, or you've taken a course on like Udemy or something like that, it's very similar to that style. It's very similar to, it breaks it up into little chunks. And the issue that I used to have is I just used to go nonstop. I used to just try to absorb as much information as I possibly could. Let's take SQL, for example. Let's say you're learning the basics of SQL, like I did. I would try to learn the basics of SQL and like as quickly as I possibly could, and just keep going and never stop. The issue with that is that I never really retained anything. I really had an issue, especially when I was first starting out, because I didn't apply it or I didn't do anything else. I had a huge issue with just kind of almost getting burnt out, and getting myself kind of lost in the process. So I was seeing a lot of information, I wasn't absorbing it. So this chunking really helped me absorb the information a lot better. So this one is probably one of the more simple ones, one that anybody can do, anybody can apply by just taking individual topics and grouping them together. And people tend to remember better this way. I mean, there's a lot of studies on this. Now, I usually try to get into some details when I do stuff like this, but I don't have all the time in the world. But I was reading about this chunking method, and there's a lot of studies that have been done on it, and it genuinely just helps people remember better. And so, this is something that everybody should be able to apply pretty quickly. The other thing that I think I had a huge issue with was trying to learn everything at once, not just in SQL, but I would switch from SQL to Excel to Tableau to Python to, all these different things in one night. And I was getting I remember being very confused when I first started out, because I'm like, I don't understand how all of these things fit together. And so what I tried to do, or what I do now, and what I started to learn how to do, was I need to kind of compartmentalize these skills. I need to learn them each individually. How can I use them individually? And then eventually they will come together as I apply them. And so something like SQL, I had no idea how it worked with Excel or why that was important. I had no idea how it worked with Tableau, but I was trying to learn it all at one time, and it just was not going well. So this chunking method is, I think, a really, really good one. Let's go on to number two. This one, I think you can imagine I've done for a long time, several years. It's called the protege effect. Now, I'm going to read it and I'll explain kind of how I've used it. It's a psychological phenomenon where teaching, or pretending to teach, or preparing to teach information to others helps the person learn that information. Now, if you guys know me, I literally have a YouTube channel where I teach analytics. Like, I do tutorials, I do all these different things. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. There are times where I don't know 100% of the stuff that I'm teaching. Now, let me take a step back. I know probably 90% of it. And as I'm actually preparing my notes, I'm preparing my information, I'll run into something and I'm like, wait a second, I kind of knew about that, but I didn't really know about it. So then I had to then dive into that and teach it and learn it more, so that when I taught somebody, when I put it up on my channel, then everybody understood it. Now, I didn't know that's what I was doing. I didn't know it was called the protege effect, but I know these technical skills 10 times better than I probably did 3 years ago when I first started out, just because I'm now teaching it. I'm forcing myself to do this. I do this now very intentionally, but I used to do it very unintentionally. When I first started learning these things, I'd go to work and I used to sit next to somebody who's very experienced, who literally had, 10 years on me. And I'd be like, hey, have you ever done this? Let me show you how to do this. And he was super patient, just a great guy. And he'd be like, yeah, show me how to do that. And I would teach him it. And then he would be like, well, have you tried doing this? And then he'd show me a different way because he had done something different. And so you can actually teach somebody, or you can pretend to teach someone. But if you have like almost like a sounding board when you're doing this teaching, it can go extremely, extremely well. This guy, I sat next to him for probably 2 years until COVID hit. And he was just a great sounding board. He was 10 times more experienced than I was. But of course, I'm in this like learning, building mode. And so I'm always coming in with different ideas, different things, trying to not necessarily teach him, but, show him, hey, here's what I've learned. Is this how I apply it? So I was trying to teach him in a way. Now, how can you apply this to yourself? Well, hopefully you may have someone like that who you're learning with. It's very beneficial to, study with someone or with a group. That is very helpful. So if you can, actually teaching somebody that's really, really beneficial. If you cannot, you can even just type up notes, create some type of PDF. One thing that I've seen a lot of people doing, and this isn't something that I've done myself, but one thing that I've seen a lot of people doing, especially on LinkedIn, is they will teach their LinkedIn audience. So they will go and they will prepare like a PDF, or they'll prepare some notes so that they can share. And then they'll put it up on there and explain it to them. Almost every time I'll go into the comments and I'll see somebody who'll be like, well, what about this? And the person will reply, that's a really good point. I should have thought about that, or I should have included that. And it doesn't make them look stupid. It doesn't make them look dumb. It makes them look like, hey, I'm learning more information. So by teaching, you're absolutely learning. And this is something that, especially since I've been doing my channel for several years, this is something that I can 100% attest to has helped me grow my skills, especially in Python. That's one skill that when I started my Python series, I was like, okay, I know most of this, but it's extremely technical and a lot more in depth than kind of what I'm used to. So I had to kind of really go in depth and learn it a lot better to make sure I didn't look, I didn't look dumb when I was presenting it. That was kind of my my hope with that. And just like that next point, teaching something forces you to dig deeper into that topic and understand the code better. It's forcing you. Like everybody wants to come off as intelligent, and you don't want to like go and tell somebody something that is completely wrong. All right, so let's go on to the next one. The next one is build projects, and this is one that I really push hard on my channel. I just, in personal, when I work with people one-on-one, I almost always tell them the same thing, and I usually get some type of pushback. For whatever reason, people are a bit nervous to really put their skills to the test with projects. That's what I've seen. It's not about the drive to do it, like they want to do it, but they're nervous to start. That's where a lot of this comes in. So the first thing is that building a project forces you to encounter errors you wouldn't get in a course. Let's say you do the Career Foundry course, right? You get told a lot of things. You follow a curriculum, but until you actually start applying it, it's going to be fairly straightforward. They do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Building something with your own two hands and actually going and doing it, you're going to run into a lot of issues. For example, one of the hardest things that for me when I was first starting out was actually getting my SQL server to run. I couldn't even get it set up. Like I was just having issues. It took me days to even figure out that one issue. And I'm like, okay, this is a bad sign. Like I can't even get it going. And then finally I got it up and running. I figured out the issue. I Googled 1,000 different things and I got it running. And now I know how to do it every single time. I know all the errors that I could encounter when I'm starting up my SQL server, whether it's a name, a password on the back end, an internet connection, whatever it could be. I've ran into all of them. And so you really learn better by making mistakes, as painful as it is. Now, how does this relate to building projects? Well, building a project, and there are even courses and videos and whatever that will teach you how to build projects from scratch. And I highly encourage them. I have a whole series. But a lot of people will say when watching them, and me, myself included, is when you're watching them, they're doing the work for you. You are watching and you're absorbing, which I think is a fantastic first step. You need a place to start if you've never done it before. So you're absorbing that information, you're doing it with them. Most of the time, you'll encounter very few issues. you'll encounter one or two here. There's a data type that's different. Is some small difference. But when you go and you take your own data set and you start building it, there is just something about doing it on your own that makes you make 100 mistakes. And it can be slightly discouraging, like I was saying at first, because you're so used to kind of getting it fed to you. And that's why I recommend building projects so much, because you're going to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to get out of, what did I call it? It's called, I didn't write it down. I should have wrote it down as a note, but it's called course purgatory. Is a video I'd made a long time ago. I called it course purgatory because you get caught in these courses and you eventually you need to break out of it and start making mistakes because you just can't go any further. The next point says you'll be forced to problem solve and use the things you learned in a different way, which will help you remember it better. I'm going to give you an example because this was one that I think helped me learn Python some of the most when I was first starting out. I was learning Python, and Python to me was incredibly tough. It took me, I would say, vastly longer than the average person to learn Python. Like, it probably took me about 4 months to learn the basics of like a for loop and a while loop and like stuff that I feel like I should have learned a lot faster. But I was mostly doing like really beginner tutorials. I wasn't branching out and trying my own stuff. So I decided to build this project where I was doing web scraping, and this was new to me, but I really was really passionate about it. I really wanted to do it. So I built this project, and I'm actually wearing the watch that I'm going to be talking about. I wanted to buy a watch, and I knew that Amazon was about to have their Black Friday sale. And I wanted to know immediately, like, when it went live. And there are apps for this all now, but when I did this like 6 years ago, the apps weren't as easy to access or popular. So I was trying to do it myself. And I set up this web scraper that was going to scrape it on the back end. And what I needed to do was when it reached a certain point, like when it reached a price of under $90, it would send me an email and say, hey, Alex, you got to go buy this right now. I ran into probably 1,000 different issues with that. Every issue you could possibly imagine, I ran into it. And so me now making tutorials on web scraping, I'm bypassing a lot of those issues. I'm telling you the way that I know how to do it without ever you encountering those issues. So by then you taking my project, you're not running into those issues and learning it as good as I did when I was starting out. So you have to then branch away from someone like me teaching you how to do a web scraping, and you have to go build it yourself and make those mistakes. Again, that's a really uncomfortable one for a lot of people. I was saying that at the beginning. It's an uncomfortable one because you feel happy feeling like you know it, but until you apply, until you build something, you don't really know it. So that is building projects. Let's go on to the next one. The next one is getting rid of distractions. I used to lie to myself a lot around this topic specifically because I used to be the guy who would put The Office on. It used to be on Netflix. I had it on Netflix. I had The Office on. It was one of my favorite shows. If you've ever seen it, I used to put it on in the background. I used to say, I learn better when I have background noise. I learn better when I am listening to something. Now, I had seen The Office 1,000 times. I could quote it. So I was like, okay, I'm not actually watching it. I'm just listening. And so I did that for years, especially in college. Like that was probably one of my biggest downfalls in college was I always felt like I was better studying with something in the background. And in a little bit, I'll kind of get to some alternatives. But for me, Netflix and like just watching TV was a big distraction. I didn't really think it was. And so I would spend 10 hours studying, but I'd probably really only study for 6. And then I didn't actually do any like grouping. So I was just mishing everything together. And I was bad at studying. And it really is a skill that you can hone in and get better at. So distractions is one that you just need to get better at. As a whole, most people do. Now, I apologize for the mistake. That was my writing. But, I literally even wrote it. Netflix in the background doesn't help. It didn't help me. I thought it did. It doesn't. So what do I recommend? Well, I actually think that background noise is not a bad thing. Listening to some music or something is not a bad thing to do. The thing is for me, I would then look up at my screen and then I would completely like stop studying, get out of that mental zone. So I was like in this zone of studying, I'd be doing really well, and then something funny would happen on the screen. And I'm like, oh, let me watch that for a second. Then 15 minutes goes by, and I'm like, all right, I got to get back to studying. And then I have to like reevaluate where I am, what I'm learning, what I'm studying. So getting rid of these distractions it was a tough one for me. I would say I did that for probably like maybe 5 years, all the way through college and then out of college when I first started learning. Then as my time became more, I don't want to say I not as valuable. I'll say valuable. I was trying to break into data analytics, and I was finding that I was getting distracted. I was like, I got kids, I have a wife. This time that I'm spending studying is valuable. Like I need to be able to focus. I was like, I have to start turning it off. So I eventually logged out of the Netflix account on my computer, on my phone, and on our TV to just not have it anymore. The next thing that then came in was YouTube. So then what I had to do was I had to literally log out of YouTube. So there's a lot of distractions and everybody has them. Another one I said, another tip is putting your phone in your bag. If you're anything like me, I have 2 people that text me. That's it. There's no one else. It's my wife and probably my mom. Those are the only 2 people. Well, I have like a friend. I have 1 or 2 friends. Very, very few people, but I would text them pretty consistently. And every time they texted me, I was like, okay, I got to answer. I know there's only 2 people texting me. It's either my mom or my wife. I gotta focus. I gotta like respond to them. What I started doing was just text them, hey, I'm going into study mode. You know, just so you know, I'll get back to you in a little bit. If it's an emergency, call me. And I had that setting on my phone. So this one, just putting your phone in your bag, really references like getting rid of it as a distraction. I now spend, and I have an iPhone, so it kind of tells me how much screen time I have. I used to spend about 10 hours a day, like even not so long ago, just because now I do a lot of my work on my phone and social media. But I used to probably spend 10, 11 hours on my phone. It was horrible. I'm down to about 5 hours, which still feels like a ton, but you should check that on your phone. It's insane. So then the last tip is going to be dedicate your time to focusing only on what you're learning, and it's going to come a lot faster. What that means is I have learned that I work a lot better in the mornings. If I get up early and now it's just work, but when I was in study mode, when I would get up and study in the morning, I actually learned that I had much less distractions because nobody was awake yet, so no one was texting me. I was still like waking up, I was drinking my coffee, and I could just focus better. So that became my dedicated time to study. Now, once I got married and had kids and a full-time job, nighttime became my time to study. But I set that time apart. Once all my kids went to sleep, once my wife went to sleep, I would stay up from, I think it was 8:30 p.m. until 11:30 p.m. every single night studying, and sometimes longer. But that was like when I was first starting out, I had to make that time count. I had to make it useful. And so it can be really tough. Again, these tips are not like the easiest things in the world. Kind of have to push yourself a little bit. But getting rid of distractions is a really important one I think helped me a lot. Let's go on to the last one. Taking breaks. I've said this for almost all of these. These are all of these tips, all of these best ways to study are all ones that I kind of had to break myself out of because I used to never take breaks. It just wasn't something I did. And so I just had to like, all of these tips I'm telling you are like, after years of doing it the wrong way, I now know how to do it. I'm really good at it, but it took me like 3, 4, or 5 years to learn and know how to study right. This one, taking breaks, was kind of counterintuitive to me. I have very little time. I have 3 hours at the end of each night. And I'm working, playing with my kids, doing other stuff during the day. So I have a very limited time. So why on earth would I take a break? That sounds like a terrible idea. Well, when it was happening, especially before I got my first data analyst job, I had those 3 hours. Is I would do those 3 hours straight, and I was breaking all of these rules. So every rule that you see here, I was breaking, and I was really hindering myself. Had Netflix on. I wasn't learning skill by skill or doing that chunking method. And taking breaks was not at the top of my list. So I was doing all of these things wrong. Now I'm very aware that if I go anywhere past about an hour and a half, now let me see if I said, if I go out, yeah, okay. So I said, if I go 4 hours straight, I remember an hour of it. This has become, started to become an issue when I was actually in my real job, because what I would do in my real job, as well as studying on the side, because I did both all the time, was I would do my real work for like 7, 8 hours straight. And I would get up and I'm like, okay, I do not remember what I did. I feel exhausted. I didn't feel good. I would need a coffee to like focus. Like it was just a lot of bad things. So this taking breaks became a lot more important as I progressed further in my career, because I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get to a place professionally where this isn't working anymore. Like I need to take breaks. So when I studied, what I was usually do is about an hour and a half. I'd break that 3 hours into an hour and a half. So I do an hour and a half. I'd take about like just even a 5-minute break was so refreshing. I would just go get a drink of water, a little snack, because I don't know if it's me, and it could just be me, but I get exhausted studying. Like I'm at the end of it, I'm like, I need water, I need a snack. I'm like dehydrated, I'm hangry. Like I'm a different person if I don't take breaks. And my wife can attest to this. Like I'm just a different person. I need breaks with my work, and I need breaks when studying. And so just something to think about. The next point is breaks allow your mind to absorb and remember what you've learned. So not only is it just good physically, you can then start to like process things and think about things. The issue with going long or studying for a long time that I found is that I don't really take a second to really think about it. I just go. This was especially prevalent when I was learning Python, which took me like 4 months, which it should not have taken me 4 months. I would just go, 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 and I never stop to think. And then when I started taking breaks, I'm like, wait, if I just stop for a second and actually think about what I'm doing, and really like just give myself give my brain a second to think, I can remember this stuff a lot better. And so not only was it helpful just for my body to actually step away from the computer, my eyes get a break, my brain gets a break, I can rehydrate, because when I start studying, I don't remember to like drink water. Give me a second. That was on purpose. I wasn't actually thirsty. I just wanted to do it to make a point. It's good to take a break and just drink some water, because I never remembered to do that when I was studying. I would just go I would just nonstop. It was semi-obsessive. And then the last one we kind of talked about already, which is take a break to snack, stretch, refuel your body to study more. I'm not telling you not to study. If you have 8 hours to study, use 7 of that to study. Use an hour to take chunks to kind of break it up, because I have done that many times, especially in college. And my body was I was always exhausted. I was always tired. So I don't think it really was beneficial to me in the long run. I know it wasn't beneficial to push myself that hard and get as exhausted as I did. It just maybe wasn't the best method. So these are my 5 tips. Now, how are you going to actually use these? Start small. Like when you're reading through these, when you're listening to these, I am sure that almost everybody out there can be like, okay, yeah, I watch The Office 2 in the background, Alex. That's me, but I'm not giving it up. I don't want to do it. That could be one thing, right? That could be just one thing. So you don't have to apply these all at once. Most of these came at points where I didn't have a choice. I like had to do them, or I was getting so exhausted I needed to do them. So identify one of these that you can do and try to start small and just build from there, because studying is kind of a lifelong thing. I have to do a lot of research and study a lot of things for my kind of work. As new data sets come to me, I have to research different domains and different things. So I still apply it to this day, even though I'm, a professional who isn't studying to get into the field anymore. I still study all the time, and all of these things I do. I wouldn't say 100% perfectly. There are times where I forget to take breaks, or I have my phone on and my wife texts me and I get distracted. But more often than not, I'm applying these almost every time. It's just you have to think about it. You have to make a concerted effort. And so a lot of these things are fairly easy to do if you set your mind to it, like building a project. you get to a certain level and it's time to start building projects. It's time to push yourself to make yourself uncomfortable. Taking breaks is something you can just schedule with your phone. The protege effect, you can find somebody to talk to mentor, to even go on Discord or Slack or somewhere where you can get into a group where you can try to like teach, or put it on LinkedIn. Or you can do the chunking method, which is just, you don't learn everything at once. Chunk it up by different skills. And so all of these things have their place. They can all be implemented. You just have to do it. And that's tough. So start small, build big. I think I'm a little under on time, but I think that's okay, because what I believe we're going to do is open up to a Q&A time where you guys can ask questions, or they may have questions already. But I didn't get to read any of the chat during this time. So I'm sure Will's going to, oh, hey, Will, I'm ready for you to come back. He told me to say that. So I'm sure we have a lot of questions that can be asked, and I am ready to answer just about any question you have within reason, of course.
Alex, thank you so much for the presentation. Great study hacks. And anybody watching in the audience, this is now your chance to ask your questions to Alex. So anything about data analytics, we're opening up the floor. So just drop them on Big Marker, or those watching on YouTube. I've got some colleagues in the background who are going to be taking YouTube questions as well. Just to kick this off, Alex, I've got a couple of questions. Let's just play this informal. What would one piece of advice that you would give your younger self regarding your career in data analytics, if you could?
So just in data analytics as a whole?
In data analytics as a whole, yeah.
Give my younger self. I have 1,000 things, but maybe I'll try to give like one or two, and I won't talk too long on them because I could talk about these forever. The first thing would be apply to jobs before you feel ready. That's something that I think I waited slightly too long. I had in my head that everyone else was going to be way, way smarter and better than I was. And so I was like, okay, I got to make sure I know this really well before I apply. And that's somewhat true. You need to know it. But I mean, I have seen it, and I have hired people who don't have 10 years of experience or 5 years of experience. You just have to start applying. So I wish I had started applying earlier, before I felt like ready. The next thing that I would do is, and this would have saved me months, and that's not an exaggeration, actually months of studying, which is identifying what I actually needed to know. I started learning a lot of like machine learning, artificial intelligence, natural language processing. I like deep dove in there, even though I wanted to stay in analytics. I had no intention of going into like data science. I just thought it was interesting, and I started like deep diving into it. And if I had just identified what I needed to know, that was a time where I wasn't sure what I needed. I didn't have a mentor at that time or anyone who I was like learning from. So I wasted probably like 2 or 3 good months of studying like stuff that I almost have not used almost ever in my career. So that would be probably some of my 2 biggest tips, like quick tips. But I could go on forever. If you want me to name 20, I could probably do that fairly easily.
Another question following on from what you just said, do you find with data analytics jobs, I know that happens in UX and UI because we do a lot of workshops on that side, is that when job postings are put out, companies put in everything they want to have. So they put in so much information, they make the job super fancy. Is it the case that you should just apply even if you don't have all those skills that they're looking for? Or is it a case that, okay.
And I'll tell you this because I was a hiring manager, and I was on a hiring manager before, even when I wasn't the hiring manager. So I have like 3 years of, understanding this a lot more in depth, which was really eye-opening when I first started. So what you're basically saying is, when they're creating these job descriptions, which I have, do they just put everything on there? To answer your question in just one word is mostly. Yes, that's true. We had a few vacancies, one for a database developer and then one for a data analyst on my team that I was at my previous job. And when we made these postings, I was like, okay, here's my must-haves. I was like, they need to know ServiceNow, which is a Microsoft product, and they need to know SQL and Excel. I was like, that's it. That's all they need to know. Like, even if they have just a bit of experience in these, I would take it. More would be better, of course. But if they just have the basics of this would be great. But because this was a mid-level position, I couldn't just put that. My boss would not let me. He was like, okay, yes, that's all you need, but you need to put on more to fill it out, make it more competitive, make the people who have more skills apply. That was kind of the like thought process from him. I didn't fully agree with it. I didn't really like that. I just wanted people who have those skills, but that is a very real thing. And it usually comes from the top down. You want the best, and the logic makes sense. And I'm not like mad about how we did it, but you want the best value for your money. So if I'm going to pay a data analyst 75 or 85,000, like we want the best we can get for that money. So we'll put more things on there, which then we put things like Power BI and Tableau and Excel or some other skills on there that we did use as well, but weren't as important. So then when somebody would apply and they're like, hey, we have a lot of Power BI. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I know that was on the listing, but I only needed these 3 skills. And so, yes, I 100% think that people should apply before, because oftentimes it's much like that situation where SQL, Excel, and that's really all they want. They have all these extras that are kind of nice to haves, and you don't know exactly what it is on that thing that is 100% need to have and isn't important. So you don't know. It's better to just apply. It's also really good to work with recruiters who know it better, who then can tell you, hey, these people really just need to know SQL. Like, you're all right. And then they'll help you. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. It's kind of a slightly deceptive, and I'm not a huge fan of it. But yes, you don't apply if you know all of them. If I usually cut it off at like 30%. If they ask for 10 skills and you know 3 of them, I would apply.
Great
That's like my
advice.
rule of thumb.
Great advice. Just for the people watching online, we are recording this session, and do pop your questions into the Q&A on Big Marker. I can just see some comments coming through. I'm going to get round to that. There is a great question over on YouTube, though, from Albert Bellamy. And I didn't know this, but apparently, Alex, you play guitar. I don't know if you've got another YouTube channel for that. But in terms of study hacks and stress relief, do you use music to unlock other areas of your brain, or just a stress release? Do you find like playing an instrument, does that help?
Hey Al, how's it going? Me and Al go way back. He's a good guy. Do I use it as a stress relief? I literally have my guitar sitting right over here. I love playing it, but I think music as a whole, I've kind of I've gone kind of meta with it. I started listening to like classical music in the background, which I never used to do. But I've personally found that I kept reading about it. They're like, play Bach, play Beethoven. And so I'll play classical music now. And I think it does help. It keeps me more calm. Like, I get very tense. You don't see it when I'm making my videos, but I will be like this, and I think it just helps me be more relaxed, which I think I'm looking over here because I'm looking at you, but I should be looking right here. It just helps me be more relaxed. So music has been a huge part of my life, but for studying, I try to keep it super simple. I don't actually ever play and try to calm myself down. I just maybe we'll put some on in the background to kind of help keep my tension low. That's about it.
Bash out some AC/DC. Thanks for that question. I'm just jumping into the big market questions. Mary Cruz, I think, has asked a great question. Will data analytics assist in veering into a path to a career in data science?
Will it assist it, or will it hinder? What it was the?
Will it assist? So data analytics, would it assist into a career into data science?
Yeah, and that's a super popular question. I made a few videos on that actually, but it 100% will. There is definitely overlap in kind of some things that you use and you work on, things like Excel and working with data sets and understanding the business side of things. These are things that you'll learn in data analytics. There's a lot of crossover. To give you some context to why I'm pretty confident about it is I was working on a data collection team, and I was a data analyst. That's what I did. But we were part of a larger data science team. And as I was in it about 2-3 years, I started working with the data scientists and I got really good at it. And they wanted me to become a data scientist within my team. They were like, hey, you really know this stuff. We want you to come on. And it just wasn't my thing. Like, I was like, I don't mind working on this with you, but I don't enjoy this. Like, it wasn't my thing. But 100%, it was a great launching pad to break into that if that was something I wanted to do. But data analytics can be an end place, or it can be a springboard into, kind of a different career: data engineering, data science, mostly those two, but also business analytics and a few different stuff. But I absolutely think this is a fantastic place because you get introduced to a lot of different things. And then if you're working on a team, you're going to be working with database developers, data engineers, data scientists, all these different things, and you can pick up from them, know what you need to learn. And then internally, if you want to move internally in the team, if they're using like Azure Data Factory or Data Lake or whatever, you can then learn that with them and be like, hey, I really know this stuff. If you guys have any openings, I'd love to apply. So yeah, 100%, it can be a great launching pad into a data science career if you want to go that path.
Awesome. For anybody from the Career Foundry audience who maybe joined a little bit later, do check out Alex's channel, Alex the Analyst. There's some great videos, some great content over there. Definitely, if you're thinking about stepping into a career in data analytics, do check that out. And at the same time, I'm not going to leave Career Foundry's video team out. I know they're in the background. Do check out Career Foundry's YouTube channel too. We're also streaming live on LinkedIn tonight, and we've got a great question coming in from Vladimir. Alex, is it really possible to learn data analytics in 4 to 8 months?
Yes, 100%. I have a video coming out. I think it's in 2 weeks, so you can look for that. But it's literally how to become a data analyst in 2023. And I talk about timeframes. On the low end, you're looking at about 4 to 5 months if you have a lot of time to dedicate to it. There's just, and I say yes, but there are a lot of factors, right? Your own, just personal life. Do you have a full-time job? Do you have kids? Do you have free time to actually study and learn the skills? I imagine it's somebody who has like a completely non-related degree, or is like right out of college and wants to completely switch careers, which is exactly what I did. It took me about a year from start to finish to follow that path, but I had no mentor, I had no guide, I had nothing. I learned it all my own. It took me about 1 year to make that switch, and that's including like applying and finding a job. But in the past 5 years, it's gotten so much easier to like have a learning path ahead of you, have tips and tricks to apply. Like when I was first starting out, I couldn't find anything like that. Excuse me. And so, yes, I think 6 months is definitely doable for a lot of people. It's just very dependent on how much time you have to dedicate. But yes, I do think it's possible for sure.
And just to briefly mention here, the Career Foundry Data Analytics program, if you were going to be working, if you could assign 15 to 20 hours a week, you go through the Career Foundry Data Analytics in 8 months. So that's just a little bit of a kind of like just keep that on your radar. And if you've got any questions about that, do book a call with a program advisor. Following on for that, Alex, I've got a great question here on Big Margo from Akpor. How do you actually cope with studying while working in a full-time non-data role? So how do you balance the two?
Yeah, that's a good question. The role I was in before was kind of like a caretaker, is how I like to put it. It was called a resident advocate. So I worked at to give some context, I worked at a nonprofit. It was for people who were abused in relationships. So they would flee their abuser. They'd come and like literally live in that place. And I would go in, help them go apply for jobs, help them do paperwork, feed them food. Like that's what I used to do. So during that time, I would do that for 8 hours. I'd go home, and I had just gotten married. My wife had a child from a previous relationship, so I was already a dad. So I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I have a job. So how do I keep studying or keep that, I guess, motivation? For me, I was extremely motivated by the fact that I was earning very little money and I had a lot to support. I kind of dove in early with marriage and having kids. Money was not as important. I was like, I really wanted to be a family man. So that motivation of having kids and having a wife, I like pushed myself really, really, really hard to kind of dive into this field. I didn't know exactly what I was diving into because I didn't know what data analytics really was, but I kind of learned along the way. That was I think I had an extremely huge motivation because my wife was earning like over almost triple what I was making, and I was making very little. And I was like, I gotta like provide for my family. I gotta step it up. So that was like, I don't know, it doesn't really help, but that was my motivation that really pushed me to study a lot. When I was first starting out in a non-data job, like at all.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Alex. I think Mario is also asking a great question. Have you got any examples, or what's it kind of like working on a day-to-day as a data analyst? What are some examples? How does your day look when you get up for that morning coffee? What does your day look like as a data analyst?
Sure. I'll speak from like 2 years ago, because I was an analytics manager before I quit my job. I was an analytics manager, so I was managing a team. So it's a little bit different than when I was a data analyst. So when I was a data analyst, I was on that data collection team, and we would get data sources from. I worked in healthcare, so it was different hospitals, different doctors and stuff, and we would take that in. So usually how it went is I'd get in at like 8 o'clock, 8:30. We had our stand up at 9 o'clock. And what a stand up is literally just everybody comes together and you talk about all your current projects. So we used agile methodology, which is basically just a way of grouping work and making sure you're on track. Like Jira or Kanban or Agile or Kanban Agile. But those different methodologies of tracking your work, chunking it, making sure it gets done. So we'd get in there, talk about what progress we made on our projects, where we're at, timeframes. Then I'd actually go back and do work. Now, the longer I was in my job, after I was in that same position for about 3 years, or in that same team for about 3 years, I started getting really meeting heavy, which that it happens, especially it's cyclical as well sometimes. Like it's really low at the holiday time because everyone's gone. But then like come January, February, I mean, it's like, 2-3 hours of meetings at least a day minimum. And then I would work on my projects. And so I'm at my computer, I'm coding, I'm sending emails to stakeholders and to our data sources with questions and issues, and trying to learn the data really well. And so the data collection team, I love data collection. That's one of my, a lot of people don't like it, but I loved it because I got to do a lot of data cleaning. I worked a lot in SQL, in Azure, in Databricks. I got to use some Python. So those are kind of the things that I used, and kind of the type of work I was working on.
Awesome. We do at Career Foundry, we also do a live workshop with Dr. Humera, who's a machine learning expert and a mentor. And we do find that a lot of people love data cleaning. Data cleaning has a massive fan base. So if that's up your street, I think data analytics will be a career for you. Just moving forward a little bit, looking at skills and in terms of like core skills that you use as a data analyst, what are kind of the core skills, the top 2 or 3 skills that you need to be a data analyst?
Sure. I'll give you, again, I just made the video. It hasn't come out yet, but I'm going to give you insight into where I think it's actually going in just a little bit, even though you didn't ask me. I'm going to do it anyways. I hope that's okay. The core skills haven't changed too much. Like when I say core skills, I mean the things I think everyone should know. But when you get into a team, then they have like their own stack, their own tech stack, which usually breaks away from the core skills. I recommend everybody learning SQL. It is something that has taken my career way farther than I thought it ever would. I kind of guessed that SQL would be useful. Extremely useful. 100% I think everyone needs to learn it. Then I'd say a BI tool and Excel. BI tool like Power BI, Tableau, Looker, something like that. There are a ton of other ones. Now, I'm going to get into what I think is important in like the coming years. Right now, though, like you learn those skills and then you look and apply, and there are ones that have that on there, but then there are other ones. You'll see things like Redshift, or you'll see different BI tools that you've never heard of, and there are a lot of them, like Chartio or something like that, like something that you just have never seen. The reason I say stick with those core skills is because those core skills are typically transferable. You can learn Tableau And then if your company has some random BI tool, there's a lot that can transfer to that. And so, in like SQL, like querying a database is fundamental across data. You have to be able to access your data and get to it. SQL is the most popular, but also there are other platforms that do it different ways, but you'll know the ins and outs of how to group your data and sort your data, and all these things using SQL. So those are the core skills I would learn. And again, when you get into the actual job, you'll find that most jobs don't just use that tech stack. They have their own unique stuff and you learn it, but you'll be like, okay, I recognize that because it's kind of like SQL, or it's kind of like Excel, or, whatever they use. Now, what do I think is actually going to be really important to know for upcoming data analysts? I think that learning a cloud platform is going to be really important in the coming years. It was not when I first started. It was up and coming. Big companies were still using it, but smaller companies weren't. So most companies weren't. They had their own servers, dedicated like servers on-prem or on premises, which means they bought a server, they store it in their location. Now, cloud platform, cloud computing is becoming so cheap. I think that is going to be a necessary skill in the next even 3 years, 5 years. I last year was kind of like tentative on saying it. Now I'm pretty confident in saying it. It's just one of those things that it's becoming cheaper. It's becoming cheaper than owning your own on-prem. So even small companies are going towards it, and they want you to know AWS or Azure, or Google Cloud Platform. And so these are things that I think once you learn those core skills, that's something you kind of branch out into and learn the basics of like Azure Data Warehouse, Azure Data Factory for like ETL processes. And it gets more technical. It gets more difficult, in my opinion. But I think that's where a lot of companies are starting to they're looking for people who already know it or have used it. And it's not as many people as can fill those roles sometimes.
Awesome. Thanks for listing those. I think traditionally they would be kind of classically be seen as harder skills. Now, if we look at people like moving into a career in data analytics, are there certain soft skills which really kind of lend themselves to a career in data analytics if we kind of look at softer skills?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's at least it was a perception of mine, which I was really excited about, which did not pan out at all. I was really excited about the fact that data analytics was a tech job and I wouldn't have to talk to people. I believe it or not, I'm not the most social person in the world. I love my own time. So I was hoping when I started working as a data analyst, I wouldn't have to communicate with a lot of people. Little did I know is communication skills are extremely necessary. So people who are good at talking, good at communicating, that is a super necessary soft skill. Another one, and this is probably one of the more obvious ones, which is problem solving. You can teach yourself problem solving. You don't have to be a problem solver to be a data analyst. You learn it. You can be taught it. And so problem solving, I think, is the next biggest one. Or, just because you run into so many issues when working with data. It is like that data cleaning process to me is a problem solving issue. I just have to if I think about it enough, I look at it enough, I can problem solve and I can fix this data set, and then we can use it for what we need to use it for. So problem solving and just being able to look at something, figuring out a solution to solve it is a very big kind of like soft skill. I don't know if that's technically a soft skill, but it's a soft skill to me. That's just one of those skills that's kind of an intangible. You just have to learn how to solve it. It's like a puzzle.
Awesome. We actually have a lot of experience at Career Foundry. We have a lot of prospective students who are thinking about starting a new career, and one of their kind of like main blockers is, am I really going to be able to start completely from scratch? But actually, a lot of people forget that a lot of transferable skills apply to many positions moving forward. The skills to present, to communicate, just as Alex has illustrated. These skills are just as important as the hard skills. So remember, you're not starting from base one. You're kind of starting a little bit further down the road. I'm going to take a couple more. Sorry, yeah, go.
Can I actually just say one more thing, because you actually prompted me to think of one other thing. Because you said presentation skills, and I was like, yeah, that's really true. But then what popped into my head was almost like being almost like a salesman. Being able to present the information, but also be really personable. I think that got me my first job. I know it got me my first data analyst job, because I failed the technical interview, and they really just liked me as a person and how I talked with them and communicated with them, that they gave me the job. Like, this person can learn, we'll teach them. That's how I got my first job. So I think I really was able to sell myself well. I had a good personality in the interview. And so, that skill, like that's presentation skill, that being in front of people and talking skill, that is a lot harder than it seems. Like that's a really good soft skill. I'm glad you mentioned that one.
For anyone that's checked out the Career Foundry programs too, we do have a fantastic career services team at Career Foundry who are behind you every step of the way, looking over your portfolio projects, but also helping you, look at your CV, look at your LinkedIn resume, to ensure that you get your dream career in tech. Just a little plug, but you're not alone in the career change. I'm going to take a couple more questions. There are so many questions going through, Alex. You've really got your community's on fire tonight. Thank you, everybody, for the engagement. Lovely to see everyone joining. Let's just have a look at portfolios and projects. I think Tung's got a great question on Big Marker. How many projects should we do before applying for the job without any background?
Sure. Yeah, projects, highly recommend. I usually recommend 3 to 5, and you can do it on. I prefer to do one on each skill. So, the follow-up to that is why do you even need projects? Why not just do the projects and not show anybody? Why do you need 3 to 5 projects to show? There's 2 reasons, and I extrapolate too much, so just stop me if I'm talking too much. But the first thing is projects what can help you get an interview, and then they can help you land the job. So it can help you get the interview because you can create a portfolio website, which then when you apply, if somebody clicks on it and sees your work, they're like, okay, this person for sure knows like up to the level of Excel we're looking, or up to the level of SQL we're looking for. So then they can be more confident interviewing you. Then when you get in that interview job, you have no experience. You know nothing about the actual world, working in it, and have experience using these skills. That is just a fact. That's where I used to be. But projects allow you to answer questions like, how have you used SQL in the past? Well, if you've never built a project and you have no experience, you really can't answer that. You'll say, well, I learned it through XYZ. I've used Microsoft SQL Server, I've used MySQL, and I just practiced. Not a great answer. Projects allow you to answer it like this. Well, I was actually just building this project using SQL, where I took data from Excel, I imported it in, I did the data cleaning process, and I did some exploratory data analysis using SQL, and I found these insights. So it just sounds so much better when you talk like that, and you're pointing at specific projects, and you can say, I did a project on, this data set, or I did a project on this issue. And if you have projects that are catered to your industry, mine is healthcare. So then I did projects on healthcare. And they would ask me questions about things like ICD codes. Do you know anything about ICD codes? And I'd be like, yeah, I did a project on ICD codes, being able to break them out by these disorders or these diagnoses. So projects can be extremely helpful. So 3 to 5, with different skills. If they want Tableau, make a project in Tableau. That's kind of again, I could talk about that stuff for hours, so I'm just going to stop there. But that's my general tips on like projects.
Cheers, Alex. Now, a buzzword I think this year and at the end of last year was ChatGPT, and a couple of questions are coming this evening.
Yep.
How do you think AI platforms such as ChatGPT will change the future of data roles or data reporting?
No, I love ChatGPT. I've been using it actually a lot more in the past 2 weeks. And it's been, I've had that exact question. So like, this is new to me, but I can already see in my head how it's going to change things. I think it's going to have actually a slightly bigger impact than most people would think. And not in the way that most people are thinking. A lot of people, they worry, they say, okay, ChatGPT is coming out. Managers or companies will not need data analysts because they'll just go and ask ChatGPT, which is eventually going to be connected to their data. Like that's what people imagine. There's a lot of issues in that thinking from an actual technical standpoint. So I don't think I don't see that happening right off the bat. I don't see it replacing fully any type of data analysis or data analyst work. Not in the near future. Definitely not in like the next 10 years. It's just most people don't understand how technically behind companies are. There are even my company that I used to be at was behind. They just, ChatGPT, even if it could solve all your issues tomorrow, it would still take most companies 15 years to catch up. So, it's not going to happen. But in terms of how it's going to change data analytics, I foresee that because Microsoft is already starting to play a big game, and I don't want to get into all the politics behind it, but the technology itself, if integrated with a lot of different products, can be massively useful. I don't think it's going to replace data analysts. I think what it will do is enhance a lot of the work, and potentially down the road, 10 years down the road, instead of needing, 5 data analysts, you only need 3 data analysts on a team, potentially. But that's really speculative. And I think at most companies that won't actually be true, just because, again, of how behind they are. But it's fascinating. And I have used it myself for SQL and Python and creating formulas and stuff like that. It's insanely helpful, and it generates stuff that I can't find on Google. Like, I Google the exact same thing. It can't give me an answer. I can't find anything. I'll put it on ChatGPT and it'll generate something that's actually usable. So it's an incredible, it's mind-blowing software. I've been messing around with it. I'm going to make a video on it eventually about like my thoughts, how to use it, and just because it's pretty revolutionary. I've been pretty blown away by it. It's pretty amazing.
I read a fantastic post on LinkedIn this morning, which said that you should treat ChatGPT as the company intern. So into your work, it's not going to be perfect every time, but just as a backup, as an intern, a company intern, definitely a good. Sorry, I don't know who posted that, but I just read it in the digest this morning. But
yeah,
do check it out, and I think that was a great answer.
I'll make one more note. I'll make one more note. I think ChatGPT is actually it's slightly dangerous, and here's why I will say that. I have 5 years experience, or 5 years experience as a data analyst, but I have a lot of years experience, or many years experience, just trying to search things online, right? That's a skill. Googling and using it as a skill. The issue with something like ChatGPT is if you're just starting out and you try to use it, you don't know what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. So when I'm using it now, I know SQL probably to about like a developer level. I worked with a lot of developers. I think I'm about at like a developer level. So I know the ins and outs of like how SQL works, the back end, the front end, everything, for the most part, not like to toot my own horn. But if you're just starting out and you don't know those things, and it gives you this output and you just kind of trust it because you're like, well, it's ChatGPT, it should know. The issue with that is that I've actually been using it for the past 2 weeks, and I'm like, okay, it's kind of giving me what we need, but I can tell by looking at the code that it's wrong. Like, I just know. And so it can be a bit misleading because it's not perfect. And so if you don't know the skill well, and then you try to use it, like I was saying, I don't think it's going to replace data analysts, because you have to, ChatGPT is going to be a skill, just like any other skill. You're going to have to know how to answer it, how to interpret it, how to actually use it. And they're going to want someone to do that. That's what a data analyst is going to do. They're just going to want you to use that tool. So it can be dangerous, because if you don't know what you're looking for, you don't know that skill well enough, and you trust it, it could lead you down just a path that's going nowhere. So knowing the skill before you start using it for that skill, or incorporating it in writing SQL code, it can be dangerous. That's just a note that I was thinking about.
No, I think that's great advice, and I think for anyone starting out, don't just leap into ChatGPT. Use some other sources, but it could be a great assistant to your learning too. So do keep an eye on it. In terms of looking around and like keeping up to date with all the latest resources, do you have some places where you keep up to date with all the latest data information, or 3 favorite blogs, or?
It's different for me because everybody sends me things. I get LinkedIn messages every single day, emails every single day. Hey, check this out, check out this article. So I get it from my audience now, so it's a little different. But mostly they'll send me articles from like Medium. They'll send me articles from Towards Data Science. I'm like, this is my like focusing face. towards data science medium, and sometimes like Reddit, which will take us to like a different websites. But yeah, and then I do a lot on LinkedIn. So like on LinkedIn, I get a lot of information or articles that I'll like then go and read. So yeah, probably like some of those.
Fab. I think this is a great moment to say that we've also got a lot of editors in-house at Career Foundry. So on Big Market, I would just post a link to the Career Foundry Data Analytics blog. There's some great specific articles there about things that we discussed this evening, but there's also some more general articles about career change. And I think our editors would be a little bit annoyed if I didn't post it. So do check that out. They do write some great articles, and I would recommend checking that out. Alex, I know we haven't got so much time. I'm just going to ask a couple more questions. But for you,
sure.
what is the best part about being a data analyst? Why do you love this career?
Sure. Yeah. No, we can run over. My wife's not home, so I got all the time in the world. Let's see. The best part about being a data analyst. It's funny because it's counterintuitive to when I was saying something earlier. I said I really wished it was like you worked on your own. I've actually found that if you're working with the right people, it can be fantastic. When I first got into analytics, people just like helping for the most. Like if you find the right people like helping you. So if you have a problem, you can help them and work with them to problem solve. And I found myself being a much more collaborative person than I thought I was. And I love that aspect of it. I like that you can work with somebody and like figure out these really technical, complex problems. And when you figure it out, it's like, it is extremely rewarding. You feel really good about yourself. And so I like working with people. I found that to be very fun. Then the other side of that is I get to work with really cool tech stacks. I just really I like cloud platforms. I like Python. I like SQL. And then, there's different variations and flavors, and you just have to figure it out. And so I like to dig. I like to dig into technical things and really understand them well. And so, that's something that I really like, is I get to do that for my job. I don't just have to do it in my free time. I get paid to do it.
Awesome. Just talk about the community as well. It's fantastic to see on your channel, Alex, that you've really developed a community there which support each other. That's something that we've seen looking at the channel from Career Foundry's perspective, but it's great to see everyone, giving each other advice and jumping in. Love to see that on your channel. So do check out Alex's YouTube channel, Alex the Analyst. And taking a couple more questions from Big Market. I think this is a great one coming in, and I do apologize if I pronounce anyone's names wrong, but Vanil on Big Market is saying, what is the future of data analyst roles? What's the future of data analytics?
The future. It's hard to predict the future, but I can give my best guess. As technology, since I've been in the past 5 years, but especially in the past, I would say 10 years, since the explosion of data science, there's a lot of undefined roles, even especially in analytics. You may not think it, but I've seen it firsthand. Like, you go to Silicon Valley and a data scientist is what a data analyst does for some jobs. There's a lot of mishmashing of jobs. I think that's going to happen even more so in the future, where they'll want a core data analyst who also can do some data pipelines, or they'll want somebody who they're going to call it a data analyst, but it's going to be melded with these different positions. I think we're looking at more hybridization over the next 10. I always shoot about like 10 years because it takes a long time for adaptation. But I have a lot of friends who work in Silicon Valley. I have a lot of friends who work in the tech space, and I've only seen it more since I've been in the space, is that most companies look for hybrid roles. They don't only look for SQL. They want SQL in this. They don't only look for a business analyst. They want business analysts in this, or data scientists in this. So we're looking at more hybridization, potentially in the next 10 years for large companies, 20 years for smaller companies. That's kind of like a prediction of mine that I've had for the past year or two. I'm like, I just have noticed a lot of overlap in responsibilities and kind of these hybrid roles.
Definitely, we see that too. And another question that we get often from prospective students thinking about doing a course at Career Foundry is salaries. It's a question that's on everyone's lips, especially as we've been talking about recessions a lot recently. And what's the kind of like the wage development like for a data analyst, or what is salary like for data analysts?
Yeah, I'll talk about it in terms of the United States, because I know the United States much better than I know any other country. Now, how much you make is very dependent on several factors. One is location. I say that was one of the biggest ones. So like if you live in the Bay Area in Silicon Valley, then you're going to inflate those prices like 100% of other areas. If you live in New York or a major metropolitan area, they're going to be higher. So for me, I was living in Dallas, Texas, and it's a slight inflated, I'd say about 20% more than other places. I started out at 63,000. That was my first data analyst job, was at 63,000. So you account for inflation, you're looking at around like high 40s, low 50s, just for your first job. Now, and that might be low for some people, or that may be good for some people, I don't know. But the great thing about tech, and this is something that I didn't know getting into it, but the great thing about tech is that your salary goes up so fast, or it can if you play your cards right. Because you start out, like for me, I started out at 63. Within 2 years after that, 3 years after that, I was making 100,000. So, the starting salaries, they're important, but if you have the thought process of like looking ahead, even just 2 years, that's where you start making what I would consider very good money. You start making 75, 85, and then you go up from there. So starting salaries, I would usually give the band of around 45 to 75, depending on where you are. Just depends on location, depends on the kind of company. Like if you work at a small company, you're going to make less. If you work at a big tech company or a Fortune 500 company, you're going to make more. So there's just a lot of factors, but 45 to 75. And then even after a year, you can look at whatever you're looking at, probably about a 15 to 20% bump, because now you have experience, and experience is gold in the tech world. And just data analytics, you get a year's experience and you can bump that up by 20%, and you can demand that. And especially as inflation continues, which is very much a real thing right now, so salaries are going up because cost of living is going up and the demand is going up. So, that may, even next year, those could be low. Maybe looking at probably like a 7 to 8K bump on both of those ends. So like low 50s to like 80.
Thanks a lot for that as well. And also for those watching on Big Marker, I'm just going to post a link to a blog article, which is a salary guide put together by our editors at Career Foundry, which also looks at European salaries too. So that's just going to, show what it's like in the European market. I think there's also some more information there too. So do check that out. Thanks a lot for that, Alex. And another question a couple of people have asked is, a couple of people in the audience are thinking about career change, but they're a little bit older, so end of 30s, beginning of 40s. Is it still possible to change careers when you're older, going into data analytics?
Yes, but there's some small caveats. I just stopped my mentorship program because I just started my own business, started doing that full time. So I took a small break on mentorship. But when I was mentoring, I worked with about 3 people who are over the age of 40. And well, it was exactly 3 people who were over the age of 40. 2 of them were able to get jobs. Now, the reason why they were able to get jobs, and what I helped kind of coach them as what I'll call, or mentored them to do, is when you're at that age, it is much tougher if you don't have any transferable skills. Much tougher. If you have a job, like one of them was a nurse. So he was a nurse for the past like 20 years. And he's like, I want to get into tech. I don't like the long nights. I don't like doing overnight work. Like, he's like, he just got married. He's like, I've been married for 2 years. He's like, I don't get to see her that much. He's like, I want a tech job. I was like, okay, let's do it. What the most important thing that I think I helped him with was changing his mindset to seeing his background as bad, to seeing his background as really helpful. He eventually got a job at a healthcare company. And I was like, you need to sell yourself on that and say you're an expert in healthcare and you have the data analyst skills. The other guy I worked with was a pharmacist, and now he's a data analyst at a healthcare company. Both of those were over a certain age. So, but I was like, you need to look at your experience as a data analyst. What industry can you transfer those skills to that they'll be like, this is really valuable. This is valuable that that person has that background and now has the technical skills to combine with it. Now, again, it's tougher. You're older. You may be just trying to get that first job. So if you have like 20 years experience in nursing and he's making, 130, I'm like, you're going to take a cut. You're going to take a pay cut, and then you'll build that up over time, back to where you were. So there, it's tougher, but it 100% can be done. And I've seen it myself. And so, yeah, definitely possible.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Well, just post one. I feel like I'm posting a lot of blog articles, but another blog article looking at exactly that question for those people. I know a couple of questions came through from the audience, so I'll just link that here. Alex, I am mindful of the time. Thank you so much for presenting this evening on study hacks and also elaborating a little bit further on data analytics as a career, all your tips and tricks. We love your channel, so do check out, anyone who's watching from the Career Foundry audience, once again, do check out Alex's channel, Alex the Analyst, over on YouTube. For anybody who is considering a career change into data analytics after listening to the talk this evening, we are currently offering a New Year scholarship. And all you need to do to book that is book a call with one of our program advisors. I can actually just change the slide here, can't I? Wait a minute, if I just change the slide over. Yeah, so we are currently offering a New Year scholarship off of our programs. But if you've also got any questions about Career Foundry's curriculum, maybe jobs in your locality or how our dual mentorship model works, do book a call with the program advisor because they're on the lines to talk about the specifics of the program and help you out, but also talk about the New Year scholarship too. I know them all personally, super friendly, so do book a call with them. And yeah, and that's pretty much all I've got from this evening. One more thing to say is that we do have a lot of exciting events upcoming. Alex is returning again to the channel, I think later this month, Alex, eh?
Yeah, on the 25th.
Fantastic. And I know that we're going to be looking at data analytics portfolios. So if you want to check out portfolios and data analytics portfolios, and remember, this is going to be your calling card into a job in data analytics. Alex is going to be reviewing some portfolios, having a look what's good, what's not so good, what to put in. So do join that. And also check out the Career Foundry events page for all future events, info sessions about the programs. But I also do a great skills workshop with Dr. Humera, where we do an intro to data analytics to take your first steps. And that's pretty much everything from my side. Alex, thank you so much for joining us this evening and presenting. And thank you so much for bringing your super engaged audience and all their fantastic questions, and for all those questions that we had on Big Market tonight as well. So thanks, Alex, and thank you to everybody out there. And we'll see you again very, very soon.